Hello friends, for today's video I wanted to go through a list of some adult fantasy works that I think are great for the summer. I will have a companion video to this that is specifically standalone fantasy books that I think are great for the summer, but for today, not only are these adult fantasy, but they are all parts of series. If you are somebody who lives in the southern hemisphere and you are entering into your winter, I'll have my most recent adult fantasy book recommendations for the winter linked for you, and then also for those of you who are entering into summer like I am, what I mean when I personally think of books that are good for this season are ones that are action-packed, fast-paced, maybe have something about them that makes us think of summer. So literally the setting is hot, maybe you have a desert setting, and also another possibility is that they just have that classic summer blockbuster feel. Not all of these are going to have every single one of those components, but they are going to have one or multiple of those pieces within them. Without further ado though, officially jumping into it, the first one on this list would be The Art of Prophecy. This to me felt like a martial arts film in book form. It is a little bit campy, but it definitely is action-packed, and it also takes some tropes that a lot of us are accustomed to and subverts them, which made it, I think, that much more engrossing. The setup for the story is that you have this prophecy that obviously everybody at some point expects to be fulfilled, and they specifically expect one of our main characters to be the chosen one who is going to defeat this enemy in the future. However, because they are the chosen one, they want to try and protect him as much as possible. The problem is they are protecting him a little bit too well, so he is becoming very soft. Nobody is willing to actually train him the way he needs to be trained, so he is not prepared whatsoever for fulfilling the prophecy that he is meant to fulfill. Q, our mentor character, who comes in and realizes, I need to get this kid into shape here, I need to train them, I need them to understand the severity of this task that has been placed on their shoulders, and this particular character is one of my favorite mentor characters that I've ever encountered. Also, when I say it feels like a martial arts film in book form, it's not just that it has action, it's the way that the action is written. You feel it. If you are somebody who can visualize really well as you're reading, you feel like you're watching these action scenes play out. The martial arts component is exceptionally well written and delivered, and it's a lot of fun, and it kind of has a little bit of that adventurous feel as well. After that, we have a book that I really could see this being recommended for various different seasons. The reason I'm recommending it for summer, though, is because it's one of those books that once it gets started, it is just race to the finish line. It feels like the character cannot catch a break, and you as the reader are on the edge of your seat pretty much the entire time, and that would be The Queen of the Tearling. This is a little bit of an older fantasy series, not necessarily classic, but it's also not newer either, and the setup is that you have this character who is meant to eventually ascend the throne. However, she has been kept in hiding for quite a long time until she is ready to ascend the throne, and as soon as her birthday happens, where now it is her time to return, there are assassins sent after her. So the people who have cared for her whole life, right away, they kind of have to say goodbye to her. She is on the run, and as noted, it is race to the finish line, it feels like, for that entire first book. She doesn't necessarily know who she can trust. She's trying to learn to trust herself. She is also a very rootable main character, and she feels like a very realistic main character because she is aware of how likely the world will perceive her, and so she has some things about herself that she maybe is a little self-conscious about, or things that she recognizes are going to be seen as shortcomings to other people. And while she realistically thinks about these things, she does not allow it to hold her back, and she is actually exceptionally compelling and resilient. I really enjoyed her as a character. I remember that feeling of, oh my gosh, this character just cannot have a single second to catch her breath. Truly, I feel like this is one of those stories that you just cannot put it down. For this next book recommendation, if you're new and don't know, I recommend books whether they work for me or not. This one didn't quite work for me, but I know it, one, has worked for a lot of other people, and two, we all have such varied tastes regardless, so I recommend books even if they don't work for me. This one, though, is exceptionally perfect for a summer book recommendation, and I would be remiss to not include it. That would be Rage of Dragons. This is kind of a quintessential revenge story. So you have this setting that is very much rooted in military and also having kind of like a class system. And if you are within some of the lower classes, you really don't have a lot of agency or mobility, you could say, within the context of your class system. That is true for our main character. He really doesn't want to live a life of fighting, so he has every intention of injuring himself enough where he can then escape the hold that his military would have on him and just kind of live his life in relative peace. However, this is not afforded to him, and he ends up having a lot lost to him, and as a result, he now is determined to avenge those that he has lost. Within the story, you are seeing just what that means to him. It does kind of have that classic, you are kind of losing yourself in pursuit of revenge feel that a lot of revenge stories grapple with, and he is somebody who, through their magic system, is discovering that he can train relentlessly and near endlessly to try and get better than everyone else around him. And so you are seeing not just being told he's getting better, or not just being told that he is working really hard. You see it. He is grinding over and over and over and over again. The next few books all definitely have more of that desert setting to them, and this first one is really heavy on the political intrigue, and also it is exceptionally bloody. It is brutal. It is ruthless. If you do not like grimdark fantasy, do not pick up this next one. But if you like grimdark fantasy, there's a chance that you will really enjoy this one, and that would be The Court of Broken Knives. Right at the beginning of the story, you do not necessarily have a set plot. You are just looking at a few different perspectives, and you're thrown into the middle of it, and you are just trying to get your footing. So you have some characters who are traveling through the desert. You gather, okay, these seem like mercenaries, but you don't really know their goal or what they're working toward. Are they running away from something? Are they trying to get somewhere to accomplish something? And so you see that group of people. You see some people involved in politics within this city that you're thinking, okay, this doesn't seem to be the same place that was discussed in the lore, or this seems like a place that's different from other places, like they've never been conquered, it comes across as, but you don't really know the ins and outs as to why. You're kind of trying to fit everything that you're learning together. And then you have a priestess character and their church and how they maintain order and peace. And you could almost argue how this city has never been defeated. Seems as though it might have its roots in what happens within this church and the sacrifices that are performed within it. How all these things are connected, you don't necessarily know, but that's part of the discovery. And it is, again, to reiterate, exceptionally violent, and also none of these characters are rootable. Nobody is a knight in shining armor. If you like a classic hero in your story, that is not what any of these people are. They are all villainous in their own ways. Morally Gray, I don't feel like does justice to describing these characters. All of them have done terrible things. It seems like just a very terrible world in general. Not quite as brutal. We have City of Brass, and then by this same author, we have The Adventures of Amina al-Sirafi. The Adventures of Amina al-Sirafi, if you do check out The Court of Broken Knives and you're like, that was a really dark story, and you need something that's kind of fun, lighthearted adventure, it just feels like kind of what I described at the beginning. You just go to the movies and you see this fun action adventure story. Amina al-Sirafi perfectly captures this. You follow this woman who is a mother, and she has kind of lived a lot of really exciting moments in her life, and she craves that a little bit, but she also wants to provide for her daughter, be there for her daughter. She loves her dearly, and she has one of those, oh, there's one last mission calling to her, and if she can fulfill this quest, then she probably would be able to secure a good life for her daughter. So she decides, okay, I'm going to embark on this journey one last time, but it doesn't really necessarily feel like maybe the journey has taken its claws out of her. She is definitely still really hooked into all of this, and you follow her as she is a very charming, charismatic, rootable character. I think she kind of makes the story. It makes sense that she is the titular character and that they would make a point to have her in the title because she is kind of the center of this whole thing. And I think that's a really admirable thing, because when you have action adventure stories, when you have that charming, rakish type character, they're kind of sometimes what makes it so fun, because it's almost like what we describe oftentimes with battle scenes, where if you don't have stakes involved, then the battle doesn't really mean as much. And I think you could say something similar to when you have these adventurous type of stories, the adventure in part is fun because of the characters that are going on this adventure, and I think that's very, very true for Amina. City of Brass definitely leans a little bit more into being on the epic side of things. Maybe not as epic as something like Malazan or Stormlight necessarily, but it definitely leans into epic as it has a lot of lore within it over the course of the trilogy. You are looking at all these different factions and you are trying to understand this long history as to why all these various groups feel the way they feel about one another, why there is a lot of animosity, why it's not easy to just forgive and forget. And within all of this, you have a few different perspectives. One is a character who is a part of a ruling class, but he also really understands the reasoning behind another group that is seen as almost like a resistance group. So maybe he is trying to almost play both sides. Then you have another character who is an outsider, and she has kind of entered this place, but it seems like she is somebody of important birth that she is not even aware of until she arrives. And you have various other perspectives over the course of the story as well, but those are your two main ones, and you are really examining this new world through one of our characters, Nahri, and then you are also trying to figure out why she's so important. And you get a lot of politics, you get action, you get this amazing, incredible setting that feels incredibly well realized. And I've described there being different kinds of world building. So when you think of the horizontal world building, that means it spreads out across a lot of different areas versus vertical world building, which is more of like lore intense types of world building where all of that informs present day. This had a little mix of both, as not only do you have the City of Brass, but you also are looking at historical fiction setting because it actually kicks off starting in Cairo. So you kind of have a mix of different locations as well. But the lore, truly, to repeat myself here, is where you're going to see so much richness within this and where it kind of invites you to really pay close attention to all the various different little ways in which people act, their culture, how they speak, because that is going to play a role in the foreshadowing of a lot of other things, why certain characters are admired versus hated. It is exceptional. I absolutely love this trilogy. One of my all-time favorites. After that, we have The Wolf of Oren-Yaro. This is another story with a parent protagonist, and that is a big motivation for why our main character does the things that she does. Right from the beginning of the story, she is thrust into a position of power, and she has a very tenuous grasp on this power. There are a lot of people that are trying to disrupt her rule. And at the beginning of the story, the father of her child is trying to get her to go to a certain place, and she is fairly certain that it is a trap, but she feels like she has to go. And then chaos ensues, I'll say. Kind of similar to Queen of the Tearling. Once things get going, it really doesn't stop. And the plot is sort of you figure it out as you go because of the fact that the very nature of her not knowing whether she's entering a trap or not means there's twists and turns around every corner. All of these, as I've said, are adult fantasy books, and the other one that is manga/anime, but I just felt like still really great recommendations for the summer. Attack on Titan. I know it feels like everybody is aware of Attack on Titan, but I still wanted to mention it because I only checked it out for the first time a few years ago. I was fortunate that I didn't have to wait years and years and years like so many other people did for the final season to come out. I was able to devour it all within a fairly short amount of time. When it first starts, it feels like it is just shock value and violence to the nth degree. But then the further in you get, the more that you are really questioning a lot of what the characters have been told, what their supposed history is, the more that you start to care about these characters, the more that it feels like everything is hopeless. And then the more you grow to care for the characters, the more you're like, wait, is everyone gonna die? And you also start to have some really heavy themes that become present within this story. It's a little bit of a controversial story, and I would advise if you've never... I really was lucky that I never had anything spoiled for me. If you have not had anything spoiled for you, don't look up basically anything about Attack on Titan because I don't want you to have anything ruined for you. If you know next to nothing, I'll at least tell you what the general premise is. You have this society that lives within these walls, this very fortified location. From what they know, pretty much they seem to be the only people left alive on the planet. but they are very isolated. And there are these massive beings known as Titans, and they are the reason for the walls that protect people, because these massive beings, if they're able to get through, will just kill and eat everyone in sight, essentially. And they don't really know a whole lot about the Titans. They don't really know exactly what happened that wiped out, apparently, pretty much everybody else on the planet. And also, they don't really know how they're going to handle as possibly more and more people are alive and resources are limited and more people are being born. They don't really know how they're going to handle the growth of the population. And so you are like, oh my gosh, things are really dire. And then it really kicks off pretty much immediately. And you see how high the stakes are from the start. I really want to emphasize again, it might come across like it's just shock value violence for the sake of it, but it's not. And I do highly recommend it. Anyway, that's it for a list of some books to check out for the summer. Predominantly adult fantasy books, and then one anime manga. But if you have any of your own recommendations, feel free to leave those. If I have any playlists or reviews or anything like that, I'll have them linked in the pinned comment along with the books themselves. Thanks so much for watching, though. I hope you have a great rest of your day, and I'll see you later. Bye.